Megaprimatus Kong, the simian giant of Peter Jackson's Skull Island, is a devastated species. Megaprimatus maintained a bloody rivalry with the Vastatosaurus rex population on their island. This battle continued for eons until only one Megaprimatus remained, King Kong himself. Surviving as a lonely god to the island's natives, Kong was eventually captured by an American expedition and killed in New York City after being exploited as a showpiece. His story is a tragic one, but would it end more happily if we transported him to a different time and place? Today, King Kong is moving from Skull Island to the tropical islands of the Jurassic Park universe. First, we'll test him in the environment of Isla Nublar, where the original Jurassic Park and Jurassic World were built. Next, he'll go to Isla Sorna, or Site B, the location of the second and third films. Finally, Kong will find himself in the Dolomites mountains of Italy, in the Biosyn Sanctuary we saw in Jurassic World Dominion. Will King Kong survive, or be eaten alive? We'll start off with Isla Nublar in 1993, after the fences are down and the dinosaurs released. Isla Nublar is a lush tropical paradise and enjoys balmy temperatures year-round. It's quite similar in overall climate to Skull Island, which was somewhere west of Sumatra in the Pacific Ocean. Kong would be comfortable with the volcanic jungle environment, and as a resident of mountainous regions would quickly take to the young, towering mountains on his new home. Kong has only ever eaten bamboo on screen, but given how he's meant to represent a giant gorilla, it's reasonable to predict that he'd have a fairly similar diet. That would extend his foraging range to that of an omnivore, and he would happily munch on a variety of tropical plants in addition to fish, large insects, and any eggs he might find on the island. He may even scavenge from carcasses of dinosaurs, but doesn't appear to engage in active predation of megafauna. The Brachiosaurus population would seem fairly familiar to him, given he lived on an island with even larger Brontosaurus variants, and he also grew up with derived Stegosaurus. While defensive of his mountain territory, Kong wouldn't go out of his way to pick fights with the big herbivores. He'd explore the volcanic island, perhaps looking for any remnants of his own species, and in so doing would encounter the carnivores. Dilophosaurus is one of the most iconic. While its real-life counterpart was much larger and likely didn't have a frill or venom-spitting capabilities, this InGen critter was a terror to any human-sized animal. It probably wouldn't try to bother Kong, who's 7.6 meters tall. Measurement standards in the film are unclear, especially since the CGI model changes apparent size between shots, but according to the official size comparison from the World of Kong book, he'd be 7.6 meters tall at the top of his head. Scaling from modern male silverback gorillas would indicate a body mass of approximately 17,000 kilograms, or about 3 times the size of a bull African bush elephant. So yeah, Dilophosaurus is going to stay out of the way. The raptors might be not much of a threat here, but not for the reason you think. After the events of the first film, only one raptor was thought to be alive on Isla Nublar, and it was trapped in a freezer. But that's not very fun, so we'll let the raptor escape from the freezer a la Jurassic Park Survival and reproduce parthenogenetically. Most of the new raptors would grow up with Kong already on the island, and would be used to the giant mammal foraging and wandering about. It's worth noting that while the raptors were certainly willing to fight back against a T-Rex, they didn't initiate the attack, and preferred to focus their efforts on human-sized prey. Similarly, the later raptors only engaged in combat with the Indominus after being directed to by their alpha. Behaviorally, it wouldn't be consistent for them to try to take down Kong, and they'd be heavily outmatched if they did. What about Isla Nublar's apex predator Rexy? The iconic queen of the franchise, Rexy was the first somewhat realistic megatheropod on the silver screen. Despite being an old, decrepit punching bag in later movies, during the first Jurassic Park she was a terrifying threat to everything else on the island. For those who are confused by my analysis of what Jurassic Park got wrong about Tyrannosaurus, I'm in the camp of these animals are movie monsters and do things their real-life counterparts probably couldn't. That being said, I also quite enjoyed Goji Center's breakdown of Rexy vs. Sue and heartily agree that if you apply Jurassic Park logic and physics to an in-real-life Rex, then Anna Rexy is getting her butt handed to her. For this video, we're going based on feats and creator statements, since Kong is somewhat of a movie monster himself. A shout out goes to Godzilla King of the Monsters for helping compile this data. Rexy was able to easily bite apart the metal underside of the park Jeep, treating it as a glorified chew toy. She was fast enough to take down a Gallimimus and to keep up with another Jeep for a bit, and was stated to be able to run at 32 miles an hour or 51 kilometers an hour, far more quickly than its real-life counterpart. She treated humans and raptors like Scooby snacks and easily took down a Carnotaurus. InGen Carnos are shown to be able to casually knock aside huge boulders and survive being right next to gas explosions that can shatter rock. In terms of brute strength, an older and more feeble Rexy tossed aside a car with her head and matched the lifting power of an escaping helicopter, which depending on the models can lift between 600 and 20,000 kilograms. She picked up an entire palm tree and threw it out of frame as if it were a stick. Geriatric Rexy was also able to throw around the 9 to 10 ton Indominus with enough force to dent metal and break glass and concrete, as well as survive bites and slashes from her. While she was overpowered, she survived getting her own head thrown through small buildings. Her talons aren't to be underestimated, as in Fallen Kingdom we saw that she was capable of cutting through solid steel with little to no effort. Even accidentally, she can snap metal poles with simple tail movements and is implied to be stronger than the 2001 Spinosaurus, which could break massive metal fences without a sweat. So yeah, Rexy's a beast. Can she stand up to the giant ape though? Kong himself is no pushover. Built like Harambe on Super Soldier Serum, his temper tantrums involve him smashing stone columns and throwing them around. He turns rowboats into catapults with his fists, pushes trolleys like toy trains, crushes and tosses cars, and even overpowers biplanes in flight. He can break through plaster and glass walls without injury, although he seems to be more vulnerable to piercing damage. Rifles, biplane guns, and harpoons can injure him, although it takes quite a few shots to bring him down. He's also been notably shaken by large rocks hitting his head. Perhaps the most relevant feats Kong has shown is taking on 3 V-Rexes and winning, while protecting a fragile human in one hand. V-Rexes are powerful animals capable of surviving falls that would be catastrophic to real theropods of their size, and have the offensive capability to leave scars on Kong. This experience in battling megatheropods would arguably give Kong a notable edge in an encounter with Rexy, and he appears to be much more agile. Rexy is more used to taking on small prey, although she performed decently against the Indominus. She'd certainly be able to do damage to Kong, but is considerably smaller at 8 to 9 tons and only 5 to 6 meters tall at the head. In terms of physical stats, they're relatively closely matched, and neither of them would go out of their way to attack the other. Kong isn't an apex predator, and Rexy hunts smaller animals. This would leave him as the ruler of the island's mountains, while Rexy wreaked havoc in the lowlands and jungle. Years later, Simon Masrani begins construction of the new Jurassic World, capturing all of the released assets on the island and putting them inside of advanced exhibits designed to both contain and enrich them. Masrani Global's 21st century technology has a much easier time capturing Kong than the 1930s explorers did. And while InGen is confused as heck how a gigantic prehistoric gorilla appeared on their island, Henry Wu is eager to analyze the giant ape's DNA. King Kong is a huge draw when Jurassic World opens to the public in 2005. He's put in a vast aviary-style enclosure with tall trees and transparent aluminum walls and ceiling, given frequent enrichment with toys, and constantly studied by InGen's most ambitious scientists. He even develops an unlikely friendship with one of the park's top brass, a woman named Claire Deering. However, after 7 years, the novelty of seeing a giant ape next to dinosaurs has mostly worn off, and Wu has yet to succeed in cloning Kong. With Simon Masrani's authorization, he begins work on the Indominus Rex, and 3 years later, the exhibit goes public. All else proceeds as in the original timeline. The Indominus breaks free and begins rampaging in the park despite asset containment's best efforts. Pterosaurs go berserk for no reason, people die, the babysitter still gets eaten, etc. But when Claire arrives at Kong's enclosure with the Indominus chasing her, Kong is filled with protective fury and launches into battle. This fight is unlike the V-Rex duels of Kong's youth. The Indominus is stealthy, clever, and versatile, combining all the most dangerous traits of the Versus theropods into a single living weapon. It's highly durable, able to shrug off stunning rounds without even noticing. It was uninjured by an Ankylosaurus tail club to the face, multiple rounds of military-grade gunfire, and got back up after being knocked down by a nearby rocket launcher explosion. Owen's shotgun didn't do a dang thing to it either. Indom was even still fighting after getting slammed through multiple buildings covered in metal bars and demolishing them. Her claws and jaws are powerful weapons. She injured and took hits from Rexy, who as discussed earlier can damage solid metal and destroy small buildings. Infamously, she bit through the bullet-resistant aluminum oxynitride glass of the gyrosphere seconds after snapping an Anki's neck with a well-placed bite. The Indominus, however, is still much lighter than Kong. Her size is, as with all Jurassic Park apexes, inconsistent between shots, but seems to be most commonly cited in canon materials as being between 40 and 55 feet long or 12 to 16 meters, with an estimated weight of 8 to 10.5-ish metric tons. So she's smaller than the V-Rexes, but arguably much more physically powerful. Her long arms are flexible, and her claws can scratch into stone walls and tear apart metal fences, so she's absolutely capable of dealing out serious damage to the big ape. That being said, Kong's agility and experience in fighting theropods bigger than her would still give him a serious advantage, especially when physically the two combatants are fairly comparable. If anything, the Indominus is notably more durable though, given how Kong was seriously wounded by harpoons and guns that wouldn't do more than tickle the Indom. The fight would go back and forth, with Kong using the terrain and his climbing skills to his advantage while the Indominus tanks hit after hit and begins to land bloody wounds on Kong. Eventually he realizes that he's being overpowered, but his instinct to protect Claire overrides concern for his own safety as they fight across the park. The raptors arrive just in time to help Kong push the Indominus to the port, where the Mosasaur saves the day. Kong collapses from his wounds, and Claire uses all of her authority to get him medical attention. After he heals, she tearfully sends him to Isla Sorna so he can be free from human exploitation. Now recovered and on a new island, Kong explores Site B with the memory of the Indominus traumatizing him. He hadn't ever met an animal he couldn't punch unconscious, so battling a creature that could soak up everything he dished out troubled him. Still, the familiarity of the Stegosaurus on Site B is comforting, and he enjoys swatting Compsognathus when they approach him. Unfortunately, old memories are triggered again when he finds out that this island is home to multiple megatheropods. Buck and Doe have been living here for decades alongside the Spinosaurus. It's unclear in the canon what happened to Junior, so there might be a third Rex running around somewhere. Buck and Doe coordinate and hunt together, making them much more dangerous potential foes than the lone Rex he was back in the 90s. While each individually may not be quite as physically powerful as the franchise mascot, they're still comparable to Kong in overall strength while being half the mass. Buck folded a city bus like paper through an SUV dozens of meters and walked through multiple walls without effort. However, Kong performed admirably against 3 even larger opponents, although the V-Rexes were less durable. The power couple might test the ape and realize that he's more trouble than he's worth, leaving him in favor of the sauropods and other large prey on Isla Sorna. The Spinosaurus, though, is incredibly aggressive for no reason at all. It will tear through huge metal fences just to get at tasty little humans, and its powerful clawed arms can move plane cabins. It even overpowered a Tyrannosaurus that may or may not have been Junior, I say it wasn't, showing that it's comparable to the other megatheropods in the series. It subsequently got its trash kicked by another Tyrannosaurus in Camp Cretaceous, which would indicate it's still not as powerful as Rexy. Kong would be able to hold his own against the Spino in the jungle or in open terrain, but would need to be incredibly careful when drinking water. The Spinosaurus is freakishly stealthy for such a big predator and might be able to pull a Nile crocodile on our big monkey friend. They may battle multiple times across the years, giving each other new scars and earning one another's respect. Years pass. Kong is finally accustomed to the new island and its dangerous inhabitants, forming a tentative understanding of territories when suddenly Biosyn arrives to collect Site B's animals. The year is 2022. Locusts are everywhere. Biosyn's capture team retrieves Kong and brings him to the Biosyn Sanctuary in Italy, a vast green valley filled with free-range megafauna. An electric implant is installed in his neck to keep him within the refuge's boundaries, and he's set free to find his own niche. Kong is confused and upset at needing to move again, but soon gets used to the valley. There's plenty of vegetation to provide forage, and lots of small animals like ceratopsians and hadrosaurs to watch for his entertainment. He's growing old, and less aggressive now. When he was teleported from Skull Island, he was already over 100 years old, and 3 additional decades of fighting new enemies have taken their toll on his body. He learns to avoid the blind and crabby Therizinosaurus at first, not a fan of being stabbed, but then invents a game where he'll toss dead deer to the herbivorous theropods so he can watch them get yeeted across the forest. Rexy arrives. She's chilled out quite a bit in her own old age and is content attacking the deer population. But it's only a matter of time before King Kong comes face to face with Zeb himself, the Joker Giga, or as we know it on the channel, the mutated isosceles alligator. The mutant is far larger than a real Giganotosaurus, at 5.5 meters tall at the head and over 15 meters long. It weighs about the same at 9 tons, which supports my theory that Jurassic Park dinosaurs are just insanely light compared to their more dense real-life versions. So here we're dealing with a theropod still notably smaller than a V-Rex, but the Giga seriously outclasses the V-Rexes when it comes to offense and durability. Whether or not the Giga could take down Kong is a legitimate question. It has the attack power to harm him and the armor to tank many of Kong's hits, but is far slower, has smaller reach, and honestly doesn't seem that aggressive compared to the franchise's other megatheropods. If there's a time when the Giga would attack a giant ape, it's when it's stressed out of its mind at the end of Dominion, fleeing a forest fire and headed towards the emergency containment area. It might take a panic-induced snap at him, like how it attacked the human protagonists, but he'd put up enough of a fight thanks to his strength and experience that it would leave him alone and focus on escaping the flames. After the fires, peace returns to the valley. Finally, after years of attempts, the scientists now put in charge of Biosyn succeed in cloning Kong. Suddenly, after a life full of hardship, grief, and violence, Kong is given a chance to care for one of his own kind. He and his adopted son live together in the Biosyn Sanctuary, free and at peace, coexisting with the dinosaurs that survived the events of Dominion. As of this video's writing, Jurassic World Rebirth has not yet been released. Do you think Kong would be able to take on the Rancor, D-Rex? How many more original research sites do you think Universal will be able to come up with? And which megatheropod fights do you think Kong would have the best or worst chance of winning? Make sure to comment with your thoughts and leave a like. Comment if you didn't like the video as well. It boosts engagement, which helps me out quite a bit. What would you change? What parts made you furious? Oh, and if you're into dinosaur fights, you'll want to keep an eye out for my paleo fantasy series Extinction. The first book, Obsidian Dawn, should be getting a cover reveal here in the next couple of weeks and will be available for pre-order this summer before a November 2025 release. If Aztecs riding raptors and fighting Carthaginians on Carcharodontosaurus sounds interesting to you, you've come to the right channel. Feel free to join the channel to support my work and gain loyalty badges and shoutouts at the Raptor tier, with the Megatheropod tier receiving early access to videos. I'm the Vividen, and I'll see you next time.